Very good, and I welcome the opportunity to speak in this debate. When we were growing up, long before we were in politics, we looked at the news at night and we saw the United Nations, and we said to ourselves, God, they're powerful, men in suits. We looked at the G7 or the G8, whatever you want to call it, and we said, my God, they're going to solve the problems of the world. And to look at the atrocities that's going on in Gaza at the moment, and the UN and the G7 or G8, whatever you want to call them, are standing idly by and letting all this happen. So all these guys that we looked at the television and said they will solve problems, they have power, have no power. That's the reality. That's what we've got to face up to. It's people thinking that we're important when they're not important, when they haven't the guts to stand up and be counted. In fairness to this government, and especially to all in opposition, the bill that was brought in here, and hopefully it will be brought through very shortly, it is good to see some countries in Europe coming on board. But you look at Europe, and you look at when the Ukraine war started, and rightly so, Europe automatically put in sanctions. They brought rounds and rounds of sanctions to try and cripple Russia. But what have we done to try and cripple Israel's genocide? We have done nothing. Ursula von der Leyen should have been ashamed of herself, the way she performed as leader of Europe. That's the reality. And sadly, there's a few countries in Europe that still control the European Union. And unfortunately, we're not one of them. There's a few big countries that nearly decide everything, like we're seeing in the Mercosur deal at the moment. And it's harrowing to get a phone call from people that would never ring politicians at the moment, that look at screens, and they don't know, they mightn't understand the whole world politics, but they look at children, and they'd have children. They look at fathers and mothers. They look at people basically starving, hospitals in bits, and no solution. And the reality of it is that unless America's deal goes through, there will be no solution now. And it shows one thing, that America is backing Israel, and unless that deal goes through, there'll be no other deal on the table. There'll be more genocide going on, because Netanyahu doesn't care for anybody. That's the sad reality. And you wonder what's going on in the world and how we turn a blind eye. Our Taoiseach last week was at the United Nations. And a few months ago, we have seen the Taliban out in Syria, and what they have done. There was an earthquake out there, and I read it wasn't covered in our media, it was covered in Spanish media, where the men were told not that they couldn't pull the women or the children out of where there was an earthquake. That is sickening to see. And to see someone from Al-Qaeda at that conference addressing something when they are outlaws. Where is world order? Where is respect? And where is people coming together to work together to bring peace to the world? Because at the moment the world is in disarray.
Thank you, Deputy Burke.